Here.
Mary Beth Taylor.
Here.
We have a warrant. This is a continuation of case SU 1711 from last night, and I'm going to have our counsel tell us where we're at tonight, because some people maybe have them in here.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are on, my memory right, night 6. We are in a position right now. The applicant has rested their case. We've had several members of the community testify, and we have a sign-up sheet. We started the sign-ups on January 2nd, which is the first hearing. We're working our way forwards. If you were not present on a prior night, it may have been called. Once we have completed that list, we'll circle back once more. That way, if you're here tonight and there's a chance for you to testify, we want to give you that opportunity. Experts, if you're qualified as an expert, we'll be given 30 minutes. All others get 10 minutes. There's an Indian clock behind me. Unfortunately, there's no buzzer or anything like that, so when it goes off, it's done. What else? No friendly cross-examination. That was something the chairman had asked that I discuss. Friendly cross-examination is referred to as bolstering. Cross-examination is meant, as I indicated last evening, to test the veracity or the truth of what someone says. So you would be challenging that statement. If you want to speak in support of what someone has to say, you're more than welcome to do that, but that's considered testimony, not cross-examination. If you want to testify, again, we encourage you to do so. Anything else? All right, we will have the secretary call the next, oh, go ahead.
One thing for clarification, the board is very willing to hear anything anyone wants to say, but it's to our discretion whether we use it for evidence or not. It's behooves you to have your experts testify, because the expert witnesses are the ones that we're going to put the most credibility on. It's our discretion to use whatever we feel like. We're going to listen to anything you have to say, but when it comes down to deliberation, it's going to be on the expert testimony. And I just want you to know that.
Can I make a brief statement?
Mr. Chairman, Jim Griffin, Shane Banks, 70 West Madison, Suite 5300, Chicago, Illinois 60602. I just wanted to let the chairman and the board know, yesterday evening, you ruled that Mr. Parzak would be subject to further cross-examination. You ruled that Mr. Hankard would not be, I think based on the fact that he lives in Wisconsin and isn't subject to subpoena power. After further consideration of the matter, Invenergy certainly doesn't want to avoid having Mr. Hankard not be subject to cross-examination merely because he lives in Wisconsin. He's within our control, and we've brought him here tonight.
We appreciate that.
The next witness is Cheryl Jolly. Are you represented by counsel?
Yes, I am.
Rebecca Fair, are you represented by counsel?
Ms. Fair is not testifying.
Is she here?
Yes, she is.
Are you refusing to testify, ma'am?
Refusing or declining?
Well, deferring. According to what?
Dwight Shanken, 100 East Wall, Lexington, or Washington. It's Lexington. Dennis Hoff.
Have some handouts.
Would you like to be sworn in?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this case now and hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Would you state your name and address and spell your name for the record?
Sure. Dennis, Dennis, Hoff, Hoff, address 1217 Royal Point Drive, Wilmington, Illinois, 61704.
Mr. Hoff, before you start your presentation, are you asking to be qualified as an expert?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And would you like your exhibit to be listed as a proponent, an objector, or a neutral witness?
Proponent.
Okay. How many exhibits total do you have, Mr. Hoff?
4. They're color-coded: blue, green, brown, and perhaps 3.
Do you want to call them one exhibit, or do you want to call them 4 separate exhibits?
Just one.
We'll call that exhibit, supporters exhibit 1.
Which ones are we missing? We got blue.
Looks like teal and blue have been spread around.
Sorry.
Mr. Hoff, we've only received 3. Is that what you're intending?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. We just want to make sure we had everything you wanted to offer.
I'd like to start off by saying my name is Dennis Hoff. Been a local resident of Bloomington since 1989. Grew up in central Illinois, so except for 18 months. Currently, my position is a union operator, specializing in hydraulic cranes. The majority of my work has been involved with wind farms or some other form of energy production. I'd like to make statements relating that just some of the things I've actually seen firsthand, and I'd like to relay those to you directly. I've been involved with 7 wind farm projects, the first being Twin Groves, Phase 1, the second, Rail Splitter near Delavan, the third was in Providence Wind Farm near Tuscola, Illinois. The next was White Oak Wind Farm near Carlock. Bishop Hill Phase 1 and 2 in Bureau County. And lastly, Fowler, Indiana is involved with putting monopoles up to connect 2 substations. The reason why I bring all that up is because in my profession, you have very little leeway for mistakes. Someone gets hurt or property is damaged. Also, the rights and responsibilities of our trade and also the people we work with in cooperation with the companies and landowners we are involved with forces us to be responsible and caring workers. I've been an operator for 13 years, like I said. What I've seen is a lot of care taken and excuse me, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. A lot of care has been taken while building these projects. The planning is very good, at least what I've seen. Any concerns are usually addressed quickly, and there's been so many of these projects around that there's quite a few of us who are very efficient and knowledgeable about the subject. We offer that to all those willing to consider this area for that type of work. Before that, I was employed at Mitsubishi Motors for 15 years. The only reason I bring that up is because that factory was state-of-the-art at the time, and the energy that manufacturing facility required was basically just electricity, and that's what our world runs on. That power has to come from somewhere, and I'd like to go to the handouts now, if I could, starting with blue. Make it easy here. The provenance of these documents is the EIA, the primary federal government authority on energy statistics and analysis. It was established in 1974. I've just highlighted basically the most important things that I thought should be seen here. Starting with this blue document, almost all the power plants that were retired in the past decade were powered by fossil fuels. And the other part I've highlighted, most of that consisted of coal power plants. I'd like to go to the aqua or green document, please. The other half of that, nearly half the utility scale capacity installed came from renewables. And if you look down there at the bottom, what I've other highlighted, nearly half of that renewable technologies was wind and solar. And then finally going to the brown document, it just lists the kilowatt usage. That's, I believe, a general number for the whole U.S. Household population. I'm pretty certain that's what that denotes. I'd just like to say that this power has to come from somewhere, and to me, the best option would be wind. Thank you.
Question from the board.
What part of your overall work has been related to wind farms? In the last 13 years that you've been doing this?
Crane work involved with installing and maintaining wind towers. I've done basically everything that's possible to be done with a hydraulic crane. From after they dig the hole, of course, they put the rebar in for the foundation, done that. They put the concrete form in. It needs a cage to set the tower on. I've done that. When the pieces arrive, they have to be laid out, proper positioning and all that to be able to be lifted properly. I've done that. Actually assembled the tower sections together. Done that. Also putting the blades to the hub fixture. We did that also. So like I said, everything except for putting the hub on top of the tower, that's the only part I have not done.
So have you worked for Invenergy before, or is it, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, is it a subcontractor to them, or?
Yes, I believe White Oak was an Invenergy project. I was involved with that.
So they've been a pretty good company to work for, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Staff have questions? Would the applicants have questions?
No, thank you.
Would anyone in the audience like to question this witness? State your name and address again.
Katie Adams, 322 West Main Street, Lexington, Illinois. I just want to clarify, how many wind farms have you worked on?
7.
Were you ever forced to live near any of these against your will?
I've never been forced to live anywhere I never wished to be.
What? Is there a question for me?
I didn't say it's in word yet.
Just because
Okay,
I know this
we're not
is.
gonna have any of that. If it's gonna be that way, you're gonna leave,
Yes, sir.
okay?
You said that you traveled a lot for these. Can you tell me why you, like, is your specialty turbines, or is your, like, you're an operator, so you just didn't feel like you could work here?
They offered the work and I took it.
And, I mean, can I ask why?
I like it.
Okay. I mean, that's fair enough. I just, I had it worded the right, I had a question and now I just wanted to find out if you liked it. I mean, you like working on them, but I guess that's different. And you've never been next to one long-term, I guess, is, because you've been on them. I just wanted to know, like, long-term, you've never had lived next to one or had to feel it or hear it or anything?
Well, in the process of putting them together and taking them apart, sometimes you go through quite a few hours at that site. I do a lot of maintenance also, which I don't know if I mentioned that or not. In fact, last year, that's about all I did was maintenance on wind tower turbines in White Oak and Twin Groves. So you do spend a lot of hours out there, depending on weather conditions, which allows you or doesn't allow you to continue your work. So yes, we're very familiar with sounds and lack of thereof of the noise they produce.
And then you also stated you were kind of concerned with like the carbon footprint. I mean, you didn't use that word, but efficiency. Are the vehicles you're using solar?
Mine is not, it's a 4-cylinder.
So you are using the fossil fuels that you were concerned with us as an environment using up?
I have to get to work like everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Amy Winterland. I just have one question. So as a wind farm operator and you're working on the maintenance, are you trained? Oh, sure. 22825 North, 3075 East Road, Colfax. So I'm curious, as an operator working on maintenance, do you, are you trained in like finding bird kills or anything like that?
I'm not trained in it. I have seen 2. I can corroborate with that gentleman from Audubon said at Heartland Community. Those are the only 2 I have seen.
So when you find them, you report them? There's procedures in place to do that, I take it?
We relay that to the techs that are with us, and they take that straight to the O&M.
And everyone that's an operator dealing in maintenance would do the same thing?
As far as I'm aware.
Okay, I'm just curious, thank you.
Any other questions? One
Tony O'Brien, 103 Oak Street, that's in Morton, Illinois. Mr. Hoff, you said that you still do the maintenance on the towers locally.
Yes, I do.
So you live locally and you work locally.
Yes, I do.
So you receive a pretty good wage and insurance and benefits.
Yes, I work in the union.
And you spend money locally, and whether it be in a school
We'll get
district.
it penalty.
Okay, thank you.
You can
I
ask a
apologize.
question, but, you know, that's kind of, you're leading on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do. Diane Benjamin, 27248 East 1100 North Road, Ellsworth. You said you worked on the turbines out east of town by Ellsworth?
Yes, ma'am.
How many blades fell off of turbines last year?
Do not have that information.
Are you retrofitting turbines right now because of faulty, I think they call them bearings?
Yes, there are problems with some of the bearings.
If the bearings go bad, doesn't that make the blades fall off?
I'm not an engineer, I don't know about that.
Okay, well, for the record, there was one at least that I know of the blades fell off. Thank you.
Any other questions? You better run.
Thank you for your time.
Hit that button over there while you're coming by.
Philip Luckenhouse.
Phil Luckenhouse, 105 East Irving Park Road, Itasca, Illinois. At this time, we would call Dr. Paul Schomer to the stand.
Mr. Lucas, will you be qualifying Dr. Schomer as an expert?
Yes.
Okay, did you want to lay the foundation, or did you want me to?
I'll at least lay the foundation on a CV, et cetera, and if you have particular questions after that, feel free.
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to ask him if he's going to be volunteer.
We're going to have no objections to Mr. Schomer's qualifications as an acoustician. If he gets into health issues as a physician or a medical doctor, we would have an objection. But as an acoustician, we have no objection to him being qualified as an expert. Thank you.
Mr. Lukenhans, if we can save some time, it sounds like, excuse me, it sounds like the applicant is wanting to stipulate to Dr. Schomer's expertise. You be getting into health or medical studies?
No.
Okay, it will be, I assume, since he's an acoustician, it will be about noise and noise levels?
Noise levels and effect of noise.
Okay.
But just like Mr. Hanker did.
Okay. The parties are willing to stipulate to his expertise as an acoustician.
Okay, I think we can save a lot of questions by doing that. If everybody's okay.
Yeah, I will say, I have his CV, we will hand it out. It's not quite up to date, so I will ask him just for about 2 minutes about that stuff to make his CV up to date so that there's no, I don't want anybody to think we're not telling the truth. That's really about all that.
And you're certainly allowed to discuss his qualifications if you feel it's relevant and necessary. That's certainly fine.
I'm not sure if we swore you in last night or not, did we?
No, sir.
I'm gonna do you both then.
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this case now and hearing be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And you guys state your name and addresses for the record.
Go ahead, Dr. Schomer, I think I just did, so.
My address is 21. My name is Paul.
Let's turn it off. Let's turn it off. Sorry, I got you.
That's it right there.
My name is Paul Schomer, and my address is 2117 Robert Drive in Champaign, Illinois.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Schomer.
I think for step whenever you're ready.
Dr. Schomer, we've handed out SLG exhibit number 4, which is an old copy of your resume. Just want to point out a couple modifications to it so no one is confused. Going to page 2, you're about the 6th line down, it talks about Standards Director, Acoustical Society of America. You're now the Emeritus Standards Director, is that correct?
Correct.
The next line says Chairman, Acoustical Society of America Committee on Standards. You're the Emeritus Chairman, is that correct?
Correct.
Next line talks about Head of U.S. Delegation. That's it, you're retired from that position, correct?
Correct.
Okay, 2 lines down start Chairman, SAE Construction Site, et cetera, and Member SAE. Both of those are no longer current, is that correct?
That's correct.
If you go to your major journal publications, they kind of end in 2005. And this is my apology, I printed an old one off, so it's my bad. Since 2005, have you published papers on this topic?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, your updated resume shows about probably 20 more papers that are proper for your resume?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to read all those and take the time. If it's acceptable to Mr. Griffin, I think he's aware of all of Dr. Schomer's publications. We'll just supplement this tomorrow night, okay, with the rest of it, the proper one. Okay. Could you just briefly provide the board with the history of your qualifications?
Well, I've worked for 50-some years in acoustics. Started in about 1966, and I've been doing the same sort of thing since then. I've got about 200 publications, mainly in acoustics, and I recently got the Distinguished Service Award from the Acoustical Society, and I do have the Meritorious Civilian Service Award from the Department of the Army, which is the second highest award the Army gives. And I keep plodding along.
It sounds like a career to be proud of. Have you ever represented wind companies in this issue of wind turbines?
I've represented wind companies several times, a few times.
And have you also represented people who objected to certain wind farms?
Pardon?
Have you also represented or testified on behalf of objectors to wind farms?
Yes.
Is testifying on behalf of both sides of wind farms, is that common in your industry?
That's not very common. I think I'm the only one.
You're familiar with the IPCB standards for noise, correct?
Pollution Control Board, yes.
And were you involved in writing those standards?
I was involved in writing the standards. The basic standard was put together by a consultant, but in defending the standards and bringing them forward, there was a group of 4, a professor in economics, 2 professors in law, and a graduate student, me.
When was that?
That was about 1968 through about 5-6 years.
Are you familiar with, under the IPCB regulations, what point on a property noise level measures, or noise levels should be measured at?
The Illinois rules say that you can measure anywhere within the property line, but not closer than 25 feet to any external noise source.
So if the noise standard, if the noise level is above the standard at any point on the property, it would be in violation of the IPCB regulations?
Yeah, you can measure anywhere, and if it violates anywhere on the property, it's a violation.
And why is that?
Well, people don't live battened up in their houses, hopefully they can come outside and entertain outside and have activities.
Obviously, the IPCD standards exist. Are those the most appropriate standards in your mind to measure noise levels from wind turbines?
As a key member in the technical development of the standards, I can say that wind farms were never contemplated and shouldn't be considered part of the standard.
Why not?
Because they're just different from the category they're being put in is factory noise, but factory noise for the most part is impulsive hammering or little fans, relatively speaking, on the roof for ventilation, or even bigger fans for air pollution, but nothing like a wind turbine. And these regulations were written 60 years ago. It's half a century and a decade. I've learned something in those years, and the whole state of the art has moved forward. The American National Standard, the International Standard on Environmental Noise, are all 2 or 3 years old, not 60.
Do Illinois rules protect people from wind turbines, the current Illinois regulations?
I don't believe they protect adequately. They're very inadequate. Do the IPCB regulations allow you to average test results? The board rules are a one-time. If you break the limit, you're over the limit in 1 hour, it's a violation. It's sort of like the mind of a speeding ticket. If you go the speed limit for 2 hours, but you speed for 10 minutes, you can get a ticket.
Were you involved in preparing the California Ridge study with Mr. Hankard?
Yes, I was.
Showing you what has been marked as SLG Exhibit 3. Is that California Ridge wind study?
Yes, it is. It's a weighty study.
Okay. And for the record, this is also applicant's exhibit, I think, 18, or was that 13? But this is the actual full set, not just the, so I'm going to hand this out, or whatever's easiest for everybody. As Dr. Schomer said, it's a very heavy study. And who was that study prepared on behalf of? Who did you prepare the study on behalf of?
I was working with the attorneys, Blazer.
And who was their client, you know? Invenergy?
I believe it was Invenergy.
Okay.
If I can interrupt you just a minute, maybe hold it just a little closer to you so we can hear you a little better.
Sorry.
You're doing fine, but just a little bit more. I'm low deaf.
If you could look at page 44 of the California Ridge study, please, paragraph 7 in the conclusion sections.
Okay.
Paragraph 7 discusses the fact that the average of the actual measurements at California Ridge was 2 decibels below the limits at the 1,000 hertz octave band. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Would this, in your opinion, justify lowering the model by 2 decibels across the board on this project?
No.
In your opinion, is there anything in the California Ridge study that would justify lowering the model numbers by 2 decibels across the board at the 1,000 hertz octave band?
No.
Why not?
Because you're dealing with predictions of contours or isobars of noise, And I think they say that they use ISO, oh, I forget the number of the ISO standard.
Is it 9613?
Yes. And a standard like that is done through many measurements over time. They measured here 2 dB, but they might go down the street and measure somewhere else plus 1 dB. You have to have something that works over time and on average. He's not going to change ISO 19, whatever number we said. He's not going to change that by making one measurement, one site measurement. This has to be developed over time, and it has to be standardized, and that's not something you do on one measurement.
If you were to put 2 wind projects right next to each other, what would that do to the noise levels?
Well, if there was equal turbines from 2 companies near to a house, it'd go up by about 3 dB from what was predicted.
How long have you been working on noise issues related to wind turbines?
About 10 years.
Okay. Do you have an opinion as to what metric this board should be using to judge whether a wind project is safe for the public?
I would like to see correct measurements made, but the state of the art right now, I feel, is A-weighted measurements. That has the most information and most hooks that you can relate things to. And so I would recommend A-weighting right now.
Okay. Do you consider noise from wind turbines to have a capacity to create concern for human health and safety?
Yes.
Why?
First of all, our source of annoyance, and in acoustics we measure high annoyance, at least in this country, and in most countries. And high annoyance is not occasional annoyance or, gee, I'd rather not hear that. It's more of a all-consuming problem. There's just a problem a whole lot of the time. And for those people, we term that high annoyance.
I'm sorry, please continue.
And all noise sources in the United States, public, like airports, highways, factories, firing ranges, are assessed by the percent of people highly annoyed.
Do others in your field agree with you?
Oh, it's widely used. It's in the ANSI standard, it's in the ISO standard. It's been there since the 50s. It's widely used.
Does anybody like the World Health Organization consider this issue?
World Health Organization has considered it and has a definition for well-being and health that includes this annoyance, high annoyance as a health issue in terms of people's total well-being.
Do you have a maximum noise measurement you would suggest is proper to avoid this level of high annoyance?
Well, what you have is you have a percentage highly annoyed, and if you go to a higher noise level, that percentage goes up. And the way noise is assessed is in terms of, in essence, it's the percentage of people highly annoyed.
So, go ahead, please continue.
In a practical way, I've recommended a certain area and recently published a paper that explains the recommendations.
We're going to get to the paper in a second, Dr. Schomer. What is the level of DBA or A-weighted that you would suggest is necessary to avoid high annoyance?
Well, I've been suggesting 38 to 40 dB.
And how did you come up with that?
Well, I came up with it by applying the American National Standard. Is there some water? Applying the American National Standard, which doesn't measure wind turbines at all, but it worked very well. This paper is something that we developed this last 6 months or last year. And here we looked at 4 independent sources not related to wind turbines, none of them. Well, one of them was.
Before you get into that, that's SLG exhibit number 4, that paper you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, please continue, I'm sorry. The 4 independent sources?
Yes. We looked at 4 methods.
I'm sorry, SLG 5, did I say something different? I apologize.
We looked at 4 methods for coming up with a noise level that was proper for wind farms. None of them based on wind farms or directly. We looked first at Minnesota, did a survey of what the levels were at wind farms in different jurisdictions, mainly in foreign countries and regions of countries. And it was about 36 respondents, and the average was around 35 dB, and probably only a few were in excess of 40 dB. 40 was far above, and so on. Thank you. Thank you. That one, it's clearly 40 dB is on the high side. The second way we did it was...
We're going to stop the clock so you can take a drink. We'll take your time.
The second way we did it was to look at the...
Why don't you go ahead and take a drink and then we'll start again.
Okay, thank you. The second way we did it was to use the American National Standard of environmental noise. The third way we did it, and that came up to 36 to 39 dB. The third way we looked at it was to look at the percentile annoyed to wind farms as a function of the level, A-weighted level, compared with percentage of people bothered to a certain degree for highway noise. And we equated those on the basis of the annoyance. And that came up to somewhere 35 to 40 dB. In the fourth way we looked at it, there's a new measure, I won't go into the technical details, called community tolerance limit, CTL. And here you can get the direct decibel difference between 2 different conditions or environments. And I think we looked at the difference of either air traffic or car traffic or both car traffic, or vehicle traffic, compared to the wind farms, and we came up with the wind farm needing a 16 dB penalty. All 4 of these methods come up with the same thing, 35 to 40, and all of them are independent of the wind farm itself. So I figure that's a pretty strong set of data.
Are there any other acousticians that agree with this being the proper maximum level?
Yes.
Showing you what has been marked as SLG exhibit number 6. Do you recognize this document, Dr. Schumann?
Yes.
Could you advise the board what that document is?
This was a document instrumented by George Hessler. George is retired ahead of me, disappointing. But he's well known in the power industry. Second person in the group was Bruce Walker, also well known, a theoretician. And the third one was, I always forget his name. Leventhal. And Leventhal has,
I'll spell it, Jeff Leventhal, G-E-O-F, or G-O-E-F-F, Leventhal, L-E-V-E-N-T-H-A-L-L.
Leventhal has been the go-to technical person for the wind farm industry for many years. And me, the four of us put together a paper for sound and vibration. George was the one who pushed it and deserved the credit for getting it out. And in there's an indication that all of us kind of agree around the value of 40. Leventhal agrees exactly at 40. I think it's a little lower by a couple of dB. George thinks it's 40 to 45, and Bruce Walker thinks it's 40 if it's a quiet area. So.
And that's DBA, correct?
That's DBA,
And
24-hour LEQ.
Okay, and just, I know you can't compare numbers to numbers, but DBA at the 1,000 hertz level is, would the 1,000 hertz level at 40, 41 compare to a DBA of 40? Or am I not asking a question that makes any sense? Fair enough, we'll deal with that later. Is Mr. Hessler seen as an anti-wind advocate at all?
No, all three of the other people are just for industry that I know of.
Okay. It's clear in your mind that some people's health can be affected by wind turbine noise, is that correct?
Yes, there is.
It's not a huge number though, would you agree?
I would say it's a very small percentage.
Do we really know what causes those problems?
We know that at low frequencies around factories, we know that when wind turbines were built in a noisy fashion, and I'm trying to think of, there was gas turbine engines put out a lot of low frequencies for standby power, that these sources can affect people at relatively higher levels. My general feeling right now is that we're getting like the very fringe, 2 sigma, 3 sigma type of people, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 can get sick depending upon the proper, if they're just in the wrong place at the right time. It's a very small number, certainly less than 4 or 5%.
I would object to Mr. Schomer's testimony on people getting sick. I think that's an analysis for a medical doctor or an epidemiologist, and that he's not qualified to make that conclusion.
Let me ask this question instead. Forget being sick. You have seen studies where people are affected by wind turbines. That you're mentally affected by wind turbines, correct?
I have been to wind farms where I personally have interviewed and talked with people, and there are people that I just believe were really bothered in terms of like nausea, and which maybe isn't an illness. I don't claim to be a doctor, but I can say what I've seen and heard. And there is a small percentage of people that are bothered by wind farms worldwide, but it's not large.
Are you familiar with Cooper's study that was done a couple of years ago at Cape Bridgewater?
Yes.
Showing you what has been marked as SLG Exhibit 7. Is this that study?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, another big one.
There'll be tests on this tomorrow.
At least I'm going back lighter than I came. You guys, on the other hand, I apologize. Do you consider this an important study?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because this, to my knowledge, is the only study that was done with a wind farm participating and giving them power generation information. And what the status was of the turbines in the vicinity of the houses and elsewhere as needed.
And why is that important?
Because by having power level generation, they were able to see relations that you can't see just measuring with a microphone. And I think that's an important intervening variable. And it's never been done before or since.
And what was this study able to see by having that additional information?
He was able to see that people were able to sense the wind farms turning on and off. Not acoustically hear them, not see them, but sense them.
So feel them in some way, shape, or form?
Some feeling in them, yes.
Anything else about this study that we should know?
I think that's the main thing, that the statement that nobody can sense a wind turbine turning on and off. These were 6 people, 3 couples, that were particularly sensitive, maybe the 1%. But they could sense it in terms of when the turbines went to high power, they knew it.
So in your experience, you said a small percentage is affected. But those that are affected, what have you seen? What are the results of those effects?
Well, the strongest people in terms of convincing me that there's something going on was one of the families in Shirley, Wisconsin, where it was a husband and wife and small child. And the husband couldn't do nothing affected him. But the wife and child were affected. And they had moved out of their house and bought another house or were renting. They were paying on their house, but they didn't want to sell it and stick some other family with it. And they weren't interested in a lawsuit. They just wanted to have a house. And I just, having somebody pay on 2 houses and not going to a lawyer just convinced me that something's going on.
Were you always convinced that there was some kind of cause and effect there?
That convinced me, and it convinced George, and it convinced Bruce.
So that's meeting George Hessler and Bruce Walker?
Yeah.
Okay. From a scientific standpoint, what would you like to see be required on wind farms that are put in?
We really need to be able to get power generation data, because I have another paper, but it's more theoretical, that really looks at this power generation as a key. And I could go into details that would take the next hour and I have 1 minute.
But the Cape Bridgewater study also seemed to relate to power when the turbines were turning on or off, etc., correct?
That's one of the about a dozen different things that I put together to try to, it seemed to show what may be going on between people and the turbines.
I have nothing further. Thank you, Dr. Schomer. I'm sure Mr. Griffin and the board have some questions for you, though.
The board has some questions.
Sure, I'll start. As the turbines go faster and faster, do the decibels change?
The decibels change with turbine speed, certainly. And the decibels, the published data show the turbines the sound going up fairly quickly with speed, and then becoming pretty much a constant as the speed continues to go up. They're a little more direct with power, but I guess the short answer was yes.
The more refined answer, at what point does it go up to the levels that any of you or your four colleagues are saying is higher?
See, that's part of the problem. It's not clear that it's just the acoustic level. In fact, to me it looks, and it's not our revolutions, because the speed that the blades are going around does not directly relate to the power generation. It depends upon how the blades are configured, whether there's power generation or how much. And that's part of the reason I think that the power generation may be more the key than the direct thing, like how fast the blade is going.
So you're suggesting that possibly it's the generator itself, the nacelle, as opposed to the blades that might be causing noise?
No, I'm saying that when you have a fan or this sort of thing, the more power you generate or blow, the blades bend. But they don't bend if they're not doing power. You can do 14 RPM and no power, and there's no bending, because there's no force, they're not doing anything. But if you're generating power, then there's force against the blades, and they bend. And I think that they're bending into an upstream weight. And that's when the noise comes in.
So it's the dealing with the wake that is causing the noise, or may possibly cause the noise.
The blade going through the wake would cause noise. That's why the downstream generators were no good.
How about the feathering? They talked about feathering of the blades at the back end. Have you studied that as part of the noise issue?
As I said, this is just, I have not studied, that's not, aerodynamics is not my general field, but.
Have you studied the noise levels on any of those blades that have some, I call it feathering at the end, which I believe is noise reduction technology?
I think that the problem's in the high end, as I said, and I think that they have to be low noise in that high end to be really effective.
And if they were to cut off the high end, so on one of the studies we had as evidence for bats, they would not turn on certain seasons. The suggestion from the Department of Natural Resources of Illinois is that they would curtail the turbine operations below wind speeds of 5 meters per second during a period from July 15th through October 15th. Well, that's for bats, and that's something different. But in this case, if on the high end the speed were curtailed, what would that do to the noise levels?
I can't really say for certain. Sometimes it makes them slower and they can make more noise, but so I don't know.
Okay, thank you. The Illinois, are you aware of the Illinois Pollution Control Board reviewing any of the noise standards here coming up in the future?
I'm aware of it a little bit.
Okay.
I've got one small piece of paper on it.
Your glass. At your feet, I'm sorry. It's just knocked over and anyway.
Oh, thank you. I know. Mountain Dew's rescued, thank you.
Especially nice like this.
in any of your studies, do you measure how the sounds from wind turbines are measured through different building materials and how it affects the wavelengths, the bandwidths? Can you comment on any differences in building materials, say from inside homes?
It would be better or worse, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, is there any particular type of building material that accentuates any particular type of noises?
These are all low frequency noises, which are pretty much the hardest to attenuate. There's some relatively new absorbing materials with micro-perforated openings that I think go down to lower frequencies than a normal absorber would for the same size. And those could be used to advantage. And they could disrupt resonance patterns. I haven't really thought about this, but that's where I would start. Low frequencies, just, we're talking about, I think, from what I'm talking about now, just a few minutes ago, it's awake, and the problems, it's in the audible range around 20 hertz to 80 hertz sound. And you just don't normally attenuate that, except with mass. So if you want to build your house with 12-inch concrete walls, you can do something.
We've heard about the differences in the direction of the wind, and obviously the windmills that are in a direction that the predominant winds, we would see a difference where downwind we wouldn't notice them as much, and obviously upwind we would. What are your thoughts on setbacks when we're talking about homes in relation to siting?
Well, first of all, I have to say that the contours and the decibel level is what I recommend is the way to assess and not a distance criteria. Having said that, we've been pretty much recommending a kilometer or just over a kilometer. 3,300 feet roughly, or something in that order.
So let me get this straight. You're saying topographically we've got more influence than distance, or am I misunderstanding? Topographically, elevations or undulating ground. What are we saying that has a bigger effect than the actual distances, or?
No, maybe I misunderstood your question. I thought you were asking what, in lieu of using 40 dB, what you would recommend as a distance criteria.
Yeah, let's go with that.
And what I was suggesting is that in flat ground, it would be 3,000 or a little over 3,000 few hundred feet.
What about on a more contour, a more rolling landscape? Is there a difference?
Everything affects sound, and most of it you can't predict precisely. You can just hope the averages work out. But as a general rule, it's going to be quieter in the valleys and louder up high. But when you have a source up high, it kind of radiates down in the valley. So it's if you put your wind turbines down in the valley, they'll be quieter, but I don't think they'll have much wind.
So
all this is done beforehand on computer modeling, because obviously they have to have the studies before we'll let them erect wind turbines. So how good is the modeling?
So what?
How good?
How good are the I think the contour predictions are pretty good. I think that this is true in all the noise sources. The prediction of the physical prediction is easy. It's predicting people that's hard.
Have any of your studies or any of these that we've talked about influenced the numbers for pollution control boards in either our state or other states? You said ours haven't changed in 50 years. You said you worked on it in 68. So, but do you know if any of these studies have impacted other pollution control boards' numbers?
Well, I know I've helped a few communities in New York in terms of, I don't know if they're never going to get a wind farm, but they haven't gotten one yet.
Okay.
But, and
all right.
I don't really know.
Okay. Do you know how Illinois' numbers compare to other states? Whether they're higher or lower, the pollution control board numbers for allowable decibels?
Regular noise, Illinois?
Yeah.
They're pretty comparable.
Okay.
A question on more than one turbine happening at the same time. How, you talked about a kilometer setback. If there were more, if there were two turbines a kilometer apart, but close to the same place, what impact would that have on the decibel level? If you have two turbines going at the same time, how much impact does that have on the perceived noise?
Well, there's a lot of caveats. First of all, you have to say there's something near a house, right? And then there's two turbines a kilometer away, or let's say a mile away from the house. And to the first order, they're each, in modeling, they would each contribute the same amount of power, so that the power would be increased by 3 decibels. The doubling of power is 3 decibels.
And how does that attenuate as it goes away? Is it on a log scale, or?
It's pretty much a logarithmic scale, the scaling the distance.
So if you have a kilometer away, the noise is much larger than if you have it a mile away.
A kilometer away would be about 6 dB louder than a mile away.
Okay. Thank you.
I left my microphone on, sorry about that. You said that in your studies you talked to different people who live near wind farms as you were out talking. Is that correct?
I've talked to Shirley and a few other people. I haven't extensively talked with people at wind farms.
Okay, so you haven't extensively talked with people who lived with them, but you had said that there was one family that was paying on the 2 houses. And how many other people did you talk to when you were, and that was at Shirley, correct?
That was at Shirley. I think it was 6 other people.
6 other people that you spoke with there?
Yeah.
Okay. When you were doing those studies, when you were going around, was the community aware that you were there doing the studies?
Well, yeah, people were aware.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Any of the groups that you belong to are they lobbying for these changes? Trying to get the governing boards, state governing boards to adopt these and upgrade these standards?
What do you mean? Could you clarify?
In the acoustical associations that you listed as, that you were members of or had been chairman of in the past and have retired from, are any of those lobbying state governing boards to change these setbacks, these dB or acceptable dB levels and these type of things to bring this in line?
In general, ANSI standards don't set limits, they set methods of doing things. And the ISO only sets methods for doing things, not limits. In Europe, you see they're kind of aggressive in setting limits. In the US, we're a little more laid back.
How do the European standards, the limits, compared to ours?
Well, in that report, there's about 30-something jurisdictions, a lot of them European, that say what it is, and I don't remember one from the.
And that would be the California Ridge report or the Australian report?
You don't have to front of us.
Oh.
I was trying to clean it up.
All right.
Those are, I think it's 6 or 5 or 6.
This is 5. Does everybody have 5?
Yeah. So the acoustic 17 Boston report would give some of those European standards.
This is page 6 of the Exhibit 5, and the blue lines represent quieter communities. And this is the limits. And you can see the average limit at 36 dBs. And I guess if you've got a magnifying glass, no, it's pretty clear. Germany is at 36, Spain is at, looks like 48, I'm not sure. New Brunswick is at 25, 26. British Columbia is at, well, anyway, you can read those. Or maybe you can.
Yeah, actually I can. And for which is this across the board or is this at a particular hertz?
These are the rules in those jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you very much for getting these to us.
Just for clarification, I think you're talking hertz levels and he's talking dBA, and those are not similar at all. You'll see that later.
I understand that.
Does staff have questions?
In your recommendation to have a setback of 3,300 feet, was that for a 500-foot turbine or for a 400-foot turbine?
I don't have anything to differentiate the two. The DBA is going to be not so sensitive to those dimensions. Those dimensions will affect. I don't want to go into too much physics, but my general feeling is that the blade area is going to affect the power. You double the blade area, you double the power. Maybe that's naive, but that's what we found with helicopters. And I also, if you just double the size, you don't get that much change that quickly. Doubling size to double power is quite a big change in power for what might be a few decibels in sound. I I don't have any, can't tell you the difference between 400 and 500. I don't think we know it precisely.
Would the applicant have questions?
Could I get a 5-minute recess before I start?
Sure.
Thank you.